Oh well, it's all right.
Yeah, the batteries go quick. Hi, and welcome to According to Pete for the somethingth day of May. Thanks for tuning in. I've been having a really good time with my quadcopter lately. Okay, my quadcopters, I've got, I don't know, 4 at this point, which is not as many as a lot of people I know. Okay, drone. They're drones. Now, a little aside, I like to be careful about that term because people who don't know particularly, or just like, you know, the common masses out there, will throw the word drone at anything that's RC controlled now, and that bugs the bejesus out of me. But in truth, okay, what I've got are drones. They've got cameras. They're acting as my thing. Anyway, I'm a relative newcomer to drones. I've only been flying for, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, something like that. I did a lot of RC stuff before that. But as far as like the quadcopter configuration, I'm still kind of new to that. It's one thing that's occurred to me is the hackability of these things is really pretty dang cool, especially from an electronic standpoint. Something as cheap as a ZMR 250 frame, it's both economical in that you can pick one up for something like $15 now. And it's also got a ton of space on it, so you can attach a bunch of junk to it. So add to that the fact that we're looking for new and better ways to bring back an aerial aspect to the AVC, and the potential of something like a quadcopter frame of that nature becomes clear. And while the big push in drones and quadcopters is for racing, and that's a lot of fun, I think we can be a little more creative than that. I think there's a lot of options here that we're not looking at necessarily, and we're getting to it, but I'm going to see if I can open that up a little bit. The primary thing at the heart of any quadcopter drone is the flight controller, and they are pretty much universally populated with an STM32 processor of some flavor. They've got an MPU 6000 from InventSense, or that series of IMU part on it. They might have a barometric pressure sensor. They might have some other junk on it. They run a fast processor. They high clock speed. And they're all running like open source firmware on them, right? Which is really sweet. It's all community driven. I've got some experience with Baseflight, right? Nobody uses Baseflight. I'm still using Baseflight. And I've also got some experience with CleanFlight. And I don't know how many different versions there are now. There's a lot. And I love that it's all community driven. That's really cool. But while all the people who are using those platforms are again, they're trying to get like the fastest racing machine. Well, I'm going to take a little bit different approach. And in fact, I'm not going to touch the flight controller at all. I'm going to do something different. What the flight controller is doing in a nutshell, and I'm sure everybody basically knows how this all works, but it'll take signals from your receiver, it'll squish them up with a bunch of sensor readings, it will look at where you've been, where you are, and try to predict where you're going, and then it will spit out the corrected signals to your speed controls to keep your machine level as you're trying to speed around a course or do whatever it is you do. Now, it will also allow you to, you can arm your system through a switch on your transmitter, right? The flight controller is reading all of the signals that you send it, right? So you can set it up to do things like arming. You can set it up to adjust your PIDs. You can even, excuse me, you can even forward some of your servo signals through the flight controller, if you wish, out to another port, which is very handy. Now, it'll also let you set up some LEDs, right? That's kind of the heart of what I'm doing here today as a demo. You can configure it to set up WS2812s, right? It gives you a whole screen just for that. Problem is, it only sends that signal to the LEDs once at power up. And if you ever want to change that configuration, you got to land, you got to connect your thing to USB, you got to reconfigure it, and then you're off again. So that's kind of a pain. While it's really cool, it could be a little more versatile, I think. So, okay, one last thing to mention, to talk about to set the stage here before we really dig in. I'm using this is very common now. Most of the quads are running, most of the drones are running the Futaba serial bus, right? They're running a receiver that runs the Futaba serial bus. And the advantage of this is that you're not running parallel PWM signals from your receiver to your flight controller. You still can. I think all the platforms still allow for that. But if you want to, I mean, it's, you know, you got power, you got ground, you've got 4 channels, 4 or 5. And then you've got, like, for every other channel, you got to add another PWM signal. So it gets to be a lot of wiring mess. Whereas if you're using this system, it's just power, ground, and signal, right? And the serial bus, it's a little goofy, and we'll talk about it a little more as we go, but it's 100K baud. They couldn't go to 115. I don't know why. They did it at 100. And I'll draw it all out for you so you can see actually what's happening. But you pair that with this guy, right? A Taranis. This is a 16-channel transmitter for $200, okay? $200, I got 16 channels, and for $25, I get the receiver, and it's like the most powerful thing I've ever had in my hands for the least amount of money. And I can tell you, in all the time that I was flying gliders and other airplanes, I never bought a Futaba transmitter because I didn't want to spend that much money. I'm always buying the cheap junk. So this is cheap, but it ain't junk. It's pretty sweet. Now, as I was saying before, I'm not going to touch the flight controller at all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to split off that serial bus signal from where it goes to the flight controller, and I'm going to pipe it up to a SAM-D21 breakout. And I'm going to interpret the signals, and I'm going to start doing some shenanigans. And that's what we're up to today. So what I got up here is rough looking at the Futaba serial bus that I've drawn out. Oh, I want to also mention that you know, the SAM-D21 is it's an ARM processor running at 48 megahertz. So this thing's got plenty of oomph to do what we want it to do, and it's easily programmable in Arduino. So that makes it doubly awesome. Now, as I was saying before, the bus runs at 100K baud, but that's not all. It's also 8 data bits, even parity, 2 stop bits. I don't know. Now, it's 25 bytes. That's the full data frame. It is framed by 0F at the beginning. And if you look at my chart, and hopefully you can read my chart, I've got the first few bytes mapped out to kind of show you what the pattern is. The first byte is going to be 0F. The second byte starts with the first channel, and the 11 bits get split. And it goes all the way down to 25 bytes. At the very end of the frame, you've got a 23rd byte, or RX23 and RX24, right? We started with RX0 because we're digital people. And RX24 is always going to be 0. RX23, I don't really know, because the 16th channel runs out in the preceding byte right there. So I think they probably got some status bits in there that they may use. I don't know. I'm not using it currently. Doesn't matter. But when you frame this thing, as I said, it starts with 0F and it ends with 0, but 0F and 0 can happen within the data frame. So you have to look for a third element there, which is that the entire data frame is preceded by at least 4 milliseconds of quiet time on the bus, okay? I say at least because apparently there are 2 different versions of this. There's a slow version that has like a 14 millisecond pad in front of it, and then there's the quick version that has like 4 milliseconds. So if you're looking for the correct data frame, you want to look for quiet time and then 0F and then 00 at the 25th byte, all right? Now, as far as how the bits are split up, it's goofy, but not goofy. It's not as goofy as you might think. The first byte, RX1, as we call it, as it gets transmitted, you're going to get the 7th bit first, then 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And then when the next byte comes in, you've got channel 2. and you're going to get the 4th bit, 3rd bit, 2nd bit, 1st bit, and the 0th bit. And then it will give you the last bits of channel 1, 10, 9, and 8. What the bejesus? Okay. You know how UARTs work, remember? Remember how they always send like the LSB first? So you've always got like the 0 bit first? Well, this is just flipped around. Some people are calling it big endian. I think that's not a quite correct description, but call it that if you want. It's just flipped around a little bit. My guess is that between the 100K baud, the even parity, the 2-stop bits, and the flipping around of the bytes, that Futaba was doing a really poor job of IP protection. Or maybe there was some technical reason for doing it this way. This looks really silly to me. Whatever, there it is. Their protocol got jacked by a whole community, and they're not really into community because the community's not paying them. Whatever. So this is the bus. Now, as I said, the bits run out this way, and it goes down in similar fashion all the way down to the 23rd byte, which is the end of the 16th channel. This UART signal is not a low active signal. It's a high active signal. It's inverted. I don't know why they did that. Again, as I was saying earlier, maybe there's an electrical reason for doing it. I can't think of one, but to read this, you have to invert the signal. Once you do that, you can use the UART. Any old UART will do it, but you do have to invert it. So what I used, right, I didn't go get one of our fancy breakouts that has like all the right parts. I don't do that. I just MOSFET, ground, so something like that, and then out 3.3 volts. So there's your signal in from the receiver, and this just inverts the signal, and that goes to the microcontroller. This is a B, very nice B, S138, which is a garden variety small signal MOSFET, N-channel MOSFET that we keep around here. That'll invert the signal, and with that, it was just fine. Now, in my proof of concept that I'm going to show you in a bit, I whipped up some boards with WS2812Bs, right? I want to make sure it's the B variety. Those things run between, like, I think 3.5-ish volts up to 5 volts. And to run logic to that, you have to, the signal has to be within so much of VCC. Well, the first time I did this, I didn't want to do the logic translation, so I cheated. What I did was I threw a 1N 4001 diode in series with the power to knock it down a little bit. So suddenly the logic and the rail are close enough to work. But to do this right, and when I say right, I mean brighter, really, because what I want these LEDs for ultimately is to be able to see them running in broad daylight. But to get that translation, again, I didn't get the logic translation. I cheated again. I don't know, maybe it's not a cheat, but it was this guy, so signal in, and it's just another gate to there. It's an N channel. It's another BSS 138 out, and then and that goes to 5 volts. This goes to 3.3 volts, and my signal is going that way. This is from the microcontroller. That goes to the WS2812s. Originally, these were 10K value resistors. What I was finding was that I was getting a lot of edge rounding, like to the point where the signal was topping out at lower than 3.3 volts. And so I made these 1Ks, cleaned it right up. That's a lie. There was still some rounding, but it worked well enough. So I call it clean. It's clean enough, it works. So that was my translation from there. Now, I think I want to show you my demo. So let's go to that. So what we have here is my quadcopter, and I was saying earlier, oh, ZMR 250. This is not a ZMR 250. It is a Bolt 210, I think, from Bolt RC. And these are my LEDs I set up. I did not want to just use the same 8 bars that everybody, or right, the 8 LED bars that everybody else is using, because there's so many other creative things we can do. Why use the old junk? So I whipped these up, thought I'd do something different, and I will show you.
Welcome to OpenCX.
Is that sweet? That's sweet. That's cool.
Switch warning.
And there's a switch warning. One of my switches, that one. And now we're on. So I've got a few things set up here. First of all, I've got greens set up, and this is front and back. And I've got that set up on a 3-way switch up here, and I've got another mode I can go to. I've got speed set up on one of my pots, so I can dial that sucker up pretty good, or I can dial it way down, right? The whole idea is visibility here, and versatility. Also, I can adjust the brightness. I can make it painful, or I can turn it way down so it's all dark. Now, when you get tired of that, you can go to the second mode, which I've got set up to do blue on one side and green on the other. And this is just like a left and right. And as you see, I've got this set up front and back. Again, I've got the speed that works, and I've got the brightness that I can adjust. But check this action out. I can also feed in red, right? I've got these guys on the sides. I can feed in some red to the blue side and make it more purple, and I'll dial up the brightness overall in a sec. And I can feed in some green, or actually blue, to the other side. And then when you crank up the brightness, the hue really starts to change quite a bit. And I'm probably dropping a whole bunch of current right now, but so what, right? It's all for science. And those are all adjustable and really wacky, and we love our blinkies, man. So the whole point of this is just to demonstrate, like, I've got 5 channels dedicated to the functioning of the LEDs. I've got 2 modes that I can put it in. I've got brightness overall, and I've got hue that I can add into opposite LEDs. And I can dial up that speed, and we can all have an epileptic seizure, and I can change the colors. And this is just, fun to play with. So that's my demo, and I'm sticking to it. I could just sit here and play with this for like freaking hours. It's just lights, man. All right, after that, let's tear this thing down, and I'll show you the work that I did inside. I took off the top of my... what is this? Black Ops 210? That's what it is. Black Ops 210 from Bolt RC. These guys are great. Australian. Costs a lot of money to get it sent from Australia, but there you go. So, what I've got here, I got a perf board. I build everything out of perf boards, right? Structurally great stuff. You even see my LEDs. I got these mounted with perf board. I piled this thing in half a dozen times now, have not broken a thing. So, it's awesome. But on this perf board, it's 36 by 36, so it's the standard form factor for most of your quadcopter drone needs. I've got the SAM D21 pinned on this with some standard 0.1 headers, and wired it up with some kind of big gauge wire, but that's what I had on hand. It's a little goofy, but I used it. There you are. And then when we flip this guy over, we have, let's see, there's the inverter I was talking about. This is the line that comes from the Futaba serial bus. I got it off of the flight controller. And there's my BSS 138 and a little resistor in there. And I got 3.3 volts coming from here, and I think ground is there. And then over here is the translation to the WS2812Bs. Again, 3.3 coming from here. Pete, you've got a black line and a red line going to 3.3 volts. Yeah, I do. Sorry. Hey, I'm the only one working on it, all right? I know what I'm doing, which is not very good probably. Then I got 5 volts coming from over here, which is from off board. I get the 5 volts right from the flight controller. It's got its own switching regulator on it, which is good to, I think, an amp-ish, which is not too bad. It'll do for this purpose. If I had all the LEDs on at the same time, I think it would draw pretty close to an amp. So I try not to do it. I try not to tax it. Everything seems to be working fine. So that's the system that I've got set up right there. Now, moving forward, what does this need to become a real live board that maybe someone else could use? Well, first and foremost, my code needs to be fixed. It's functioning right, but I do everything fast enough that I'm never missing a data frame. That said, the UART function really needs to be interrupt driven, and it is not currently. I am polling it, I'm getting all of my junk done before the next frame comes along and I grab it again. As I was telling you before, you got to be looking for the 0F at the beginning, the 00 at the end, and the 4 milliseconds of quiet time before. And my code needs to be dumping all of that stuff to an array without me having to pay attention to it, because that's just an accident waiting to happen. Fortunately, it's not a flight intensive thing. Next up, this whole thing needs to be a single 36 by 36 board. So what I'm envisioning, right, is most of what you see on the breakout here on a dedicated 36 by 36 board, which will also have a switching regulator on it, hopefully better than an amp that I can get out of it, right? If I can get up to an amp and a half, I'd be pretty happy with that. You can do a lot of stuff with an amp and a half at 5 volts. So it would be the SAM-D21, it would be a switcher that would go up to 4S, which is like 15, 16 volts. I can't remember, 4 times 3.7. It needs some optional logic translation, right? Because most of the sensors and most of everything that you're going to attach to it is going to be 3.3 volts, but it's not necessarily guaranteed to be. So a few optional translation circuits would be very helpful, I think. Maybe with some solder jumpers. I don't know, I'm making this up as I go. Lots of I/O available. That would be really cool, because you never know what you're going to want to hook up to this, right? We don't want to plan what you're going to do. We want to make it easy to do whatever you want to do, right? And the last thing this really needs is an on-screen display. Now that is a whole other subject, but I'll tell you something, right? You see these OSDs, right? The Minim OSD that you can buy for $8 around a whole lot of places. Well, that's central on that device is the MAX 7456 on-screen display chip. Now, back in the day, we used to make a breakout for that thing, and we would buy that chip in quantity for $12, right? And we're buying these things, these little, I was going to bring it in today. I got a spare and I forgot to bring it. These little tiny things, they've got they've got an Atmega 328 on one side, and they got the Max 7456 on the other, and you're buying this for $8. Well, I'll tell you who's not making the Max 7456 anymore, and that would be Maxim. So these parts are coming from somewhere. I don't have them. I would sure like to get some, because I want to make a part that's got that. But you do the math. These are coming from somewhere. You can figure it out yourself, I'm sure. So that's the plan. Now, as we're looking at this, and as I describe all of this, this really opens up some doors, or at least in my view, it opens up some doors, right? I don't have to mess with the flight controller at all, but now I've got full command of all the extra channels on my transmitter, and I can do anything with them. I can drive LEDs to my heart's content. I can set up an alternate camera angle, okay? I'm envisioning competitions like, number one, drone laser tag. I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? We can easily do that. Then we could do something like a capture the flag sort of thing. Or we could do like a relay race, like a team event, right? Where you have to go out, pick something up, and bring it back, right? So envision this. You fly out to a location with your forward camera visible. You flip this thing into autopilot, so you're signaling the flight controller to hold. Then you set a different camera angle that's down, and now you got to grab something while the flight controller holds it steady. You pick the thing up, you take it back. another team member has to take off and go get another thing, right? Racing is just the beginning for what these things can do. There's a lot of options here, and I think this will help explore it. I gotta play with my nerd LEDs for a little bit, because I love playing with my nerd LEDs. No, this is legit. This is legit, man. Put this all in. This is so stupid, right? We make fun. We make fun of people like getting their jollies from playing with LEDs, and I've done it. I've said like, oh, LEDs are selling, this is stupid, and I love the junk. I can't stop doing it. I've just, it's ridiculous, right? It's, I don't know, it's a human thing. Human failing is what it is. All right, but let's get to the point. Now, I've showed you some cool things. I think they're cool things, but in essence, yeah, we're just blinking LEDs. This is a proof of concept to show that there are bigger things afoot that you can do with this platform, and I'd really like to enable some of that, and hopefully you dig that. So, in short, thanks for tuning in and checking out According to Pete in this early part of May. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the comment section below. If you got any ideas for what we should do next time, please let us know. And until next time, I'll see ya. See, I can do the speed, so it goes like way up, and you can't even see it, right? And I can dial the tint way down. It's stupid. I love doing this. I could spend a whole day. Well, okay, not a whole day, but probably a couple hours.